Victoria East and the Peacock Throne. Dreams and Fable by Jon Hart. I never knew my parents, and from that stroke of luck springs my entire life story. If I'd had a happy childhood, then no doubt I'd have become one of the dull, God-fearing wives of those dull, money-worshipping merchants who swagger about so full of self-importance. Or perhaps I might have died in childbirth, to be devoured by worms as a brood of sickly children weep down at me from my graveside. Instead, I sit here writing in my warm summer house in my 91st year, as I dream that one of my great-great-grandchildren might read these confessions and choose to follow in my wayward footsteps. I can only wish a hearty thank you to my parents for having the good grace to die so young. For without their deaths, how would I, a middle-class woman, have explored the four corners of this shrinking globe, met kings and queens and emperors, become a pirate, spy, and an assassin? So whilst my confessions may seem to be about how I found my brother and learned the secret of my true identity, they are really about the shy, frightened girl I was, then became the woman I am now. But where to begin? The empty pages stretch before me like a life yet to be writ. Sometimes I fear I have too little time left to fill them. But as I watch my great-great-granddaughters screaming across the field, I know that the fire in my blood will live on through them long after I am dust and bones. So I must commit my life story to paper, to inspire my little Amazons. Where to begin, then? Perhaps at the moment I first found myself transfixed by Monsieur Marceau's malicious glare, September the 3rd, 1713, the night of my 16th birthday. Or I could begin in India, where I looked into the eyes of an emperor and became an assassin for the Honourable East India Company. But no, my governess, may she rot in hell, always taught me that a story must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so it is at the very beginning that I must rightly set my quill to paper. I have paused as I write this, flexing the cramp from my fingers as I think back to my uneasy childhood. 'Tis a place I try not to revisit. It seems too long ago now, that the girl I was then is a stranger, and yet she stands beside me as I write, looking with curious eyes at the old lady she has become. That younger me, that stranger, spent many hours staring at her reflection in the looking-glass, wondering who it was that stared back with her forget-me-not eyes. I was certain I wasn't attractive. I was tall and I slouched, and my governess often chastised me when my raven hair was dishevelled and dusty after I explored some forgotten and forbidden corner of the house. The ladies I saw promenading around the park below my bedroom window possessed a grace denied to me, and whereas they were impossibly pretty, Mrs. Posset, our cook, had once described me as handsome, a description that always lurked in my mind. Still, I decided that at least I liked my eyes, for their blue made me think of tropical seas and a world beyond the confines of the house. I also spent many hours wondering whether men would find my eyes as captivating as I did, for I knew that one day I must find a husband as surely as I must eat, for in the world I was born to, all those who held power were men. One of those men who held power might serve as an example of the very worst of his kind. Manning Snifkid. He was grossly built, with a low brow, round head, and his sour smell caught in the back of my throat like vomit whenever I obliged to be near him. Unfortunately, such occasions were often, for he was my guardian. I lost my parents before my memories begin, and had been passed somehow to Mr. Snifkid, although he took his own view on how the office of guardian should be interpreted, as we shall see. I lived with him in Queen Square, close to Bristol's port in the southwest of England. Queen Square is the largest square outside of London. My guardian told me that once when I said that I wished I had other children to play with. You should be grateful to live here and not with the snivelling brats in the poor quarter. He repeated this almost daily thereafter, often adding that the Queen Square was the only acceptable place for a man of his means to be seen to be living. I knew that it was well regarded, that the fashionable brick walls that were thought to be far superior to the crumbling stone and timber of the old city. But I dreamed of life beyond the elegant facade, of running free through the stinking alleyways of the medieval city with the other brats, unshackled by cares of polite society. My earliest memory of my guardian are of him towering above me in the parlour after he'd caught me laughing at dinner. I was 3 years old, and shook so hard as he screamed at me that I smacked my arm off the table, causing a porcelain vase to teeter. I watched the vase wobble, fascinated by the blue and pink dragon curling around its body. Slowly, inevitably, it fell from the table and hit the floor with a sound like my life exploding. My guardian stared down at me, the colour draining from his cheeks, his piggish eyes curiously blank. "Stay!" His single word, his refusal to say more, terrified me. He stormed from the room, and I stood fixed to the spot as I heard him slamming open the door of the small parlour he used as his office. I thought he would make me stand there as punishment, but then I heard his footsteps returning, and I tried desperately to wipe away the snot and tears that covered my face, knowing that they would only enrage him further. He didn't look at me as he re-entered the room, but I saw that he held knotted rope. I recognized it as once as a trophy he'd kept from the first ship he'd ever held shares in. Slaver. "Don't you dare move." He let the rope swing to and fro, so that it lulled me. I was certain that he would never actually strike me, and yet I felt myself leaving my body, looking down safely as my bloated guardian loomed over my 3-year-old body. Suddenly, he swung the rope so hard that it smacked across my arm. My howl echoed around the house. But I knew the servants lived in fear of him and would not come. Again he hit me, and again, my small body reeling as I looked down from above. Even now, the memory of spittle forming in the corners of his mouth and his mounting excitement as he thrashed me makes my hands tremble, though he's long since dead. Afterwards, I was made to kiss his fingers, and from then on, kissing his fingers to show my love for him became a daily supplication that he demanded, once in the morning and once before bed. I spent all day dreading these moments, and though I held my breath, his sour odour permeated my clothing, so that he always seemed to be lurking behind me. After that first beating, he used to seek me out whenever his resentment against the world boiled over. Over the years, I learned to escape by imagining myself to be in places far, far away. Lands I fancied the ships and nearby docks had seen. Desert islands, exotic ports, fabulous cities. Gradually, I populated the secret rooms of my mind with a landscape as real as that beyond our front door, a promised land, which I explored every stringing crack of his rope. It was as my childhood turned into early womanhood that my darkness started to grow within me. My darkness, my secret companion, ever watching from the shadows. At first, she was as ephemeral as a dream, but slowly, patiently, she found substance. I had no recollection of knowing that she waited within me until one day, when I was 12, my guardian locked me in the attic room after I expressed pity for 2 beggars who had knocked at our door. The thick fog outside pressed so heavily against my window that the horrible fancy grew upon me that the air was being squeezed from the tiny room. I clawed at my throat, horrified that I could no longer breathe and certain I was about to die. Screwing my eyes shut, I felt as if I had been cast upon some nightmare shore with the waves of the Black Sea dragging me to insanity. So it was that I first met my darkness. And yet perhaps without her, I would not have become me. Perhaps she was the force that drove me ever onwards, always journeying towards the distant horizon.